they called him the man from the health ministry. In the newspapers they called him other things. Poisoner. Robber. Japan's crime of the century. On the files in the evidence room, he is only unknown male, approximate 30 to 40. But to me he is the man who walked into my branch of the Imperial Bank one winter afternoon in 1948, smiled at us like a doctor, and left 12 of my coworkers dead on the floor. People argue now about whether the case was ever solved. Some say a painter was rightly convicted. Others say it was a frame-up, that the real killer was never caught, that he may have been linked to secret wartime units that used strange poisons and stranger methods. OAI_citation 0, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa, UTM_source=chat.com. I don't know about that. I only know what I saw, and what I have sometimes seen since. My name is not important. In the reports, I'm just survivor number 3. I was 23 years old and a clerk at the Shinamachi branch of Teikoku Ginko, the Imperial Bank, in Tokyo. It was January 26, 1948. The country was still broken from the war. Food was scarce, coal scarcer. We kept on our coats inside the bank and warmed our hands around cheap tea. That day, the sky was low and gray. Snow threatened but never quite fell. Our branch was small, 16 of us inside, one customer near closing time, the sound of abacus beads ticking and pens scratching on ledgers. We had all heard about a dysentery outbreak in another part of the city. Disease moved quickly through crowded streets and bombed out neighborhoods. Public health officials came and went with armbands and serious faces. So when the man walked in just before closing and showed his identification, nobody questioned it. He wore a neat, dark suit and an armband marked with official-looking characters. His hair was combed back, his shoes polished despite the slush outside. In his hand he carried a black bag, the kind doctors used to carry. "Good afternoon," he said, bowing to the manager. "I'm from the Health Ministry's Epidemic Prevention Section. There has been an outbreak of dysentery in this area. I'm afraid we must administer emergency medicine to everyone present." His voice was calm and precise, with the clipped accent of an educated man. There was nothing hurried or nervous about him, as if he had rehearsed this line many times. The manager frowned. "At this hour?" "The order comes from the ward office," the man said. "And from the American Occupation Authorities. We are visiting all nearby institutions. If there is even one infected person, you could all be in danger." He produced a document stamped with several seals. Later, the police would say at least one of those seals was genuine. OAI_citation 1darkhistories.com, https://www.darkhistories.com/sadamaki_hirasawa the Teigin incident /UTM_source=chat.com. At the time, with the weight of those stamps and the armband on his sleeve, none of us thought to doubt him. One by one, the staff gathered in the main room. Even the manager came out from his office. We lined up behind the counter like schoolchildren. The man opened his bag. Inside were 2 small brown bottles and a sheaf of business cards. "Please listen carefully," he said, smiling slightly. "This medicine has 2 parts. The first bottle is a liquid disinfectant. You will pour it into your teacup and drink it. The second bottle is a follow-up tonic. I will administer it to each of you." He placed the business cards on the desk beside him, as if to emphasize his legitimacy. I remember the name printed there, in careful black characters. I won't repeat it. It belonged to a real official at the health ministry, but the man in front of us was not him. OAI_citation 2, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa, UTM_source=chat.com. We didn't know that then. We only saw a card, a seal, an armband, and a bag of medicine. "Please, Manager San," he said politely. "As the responsible person, would you drink first?" The manager hesitated, then nodded. He took his teacup, a thick, chip thing that smelled of green tea, and held it out. The man from the health ministry poured a clear liquid into it from bottle number 1. "Everyone, please do the same," he said. "We must be efficient." We moved like people in a dream, lifting our cups, the liquid cool and sharp on our tongues. It tasted bitter, like almond skins and medicine. I swallowed. Around me, others did the same. "Very good," the man said. "Now I will administer the second dose." He uncorked bottle number 2 and drew some of the liquid up into a glass pipette. Only years later would experts suggest that the true poison had sunk to the bottom of bottle number 1, that when he took his own dose he carefully skimmed the harmless top layer, and that what we swallowed was hydrogen cyanide or some military variant of it. OAI_citation 3 https://www.fccj.or.jp/#1 Shimbun article/toxic enigma UTM_source=chat.com. At the time, we just waited. He moved from person to person, letting a few drops fall into each cup. When he came to me, his hand brushed my finger. His skin was dry and warm. "You look nervous," he murmured, so softly only I could hear. I'm fine," I stammered. "Good," he said. "People who fear disease obey instructions." He moved on. At his own place in the line, he lifted his cup, touched it briefly to his lips, and set it down again, untouched. I noticed. I wish I had not. The first symptoms came quickly. A clerk 2 places down from me grimaced. "My stomach," he said. Another pressed a hand to her throat. The man from the health ministry watched us with raised eyebrows, as if surprised. "Oh," he said lightly. "The medicine is strong. You may feel some discomfort. It will pass." It did not pass. It intensified. Heat rose in my face. My heart pounded. A crushing pressure clamped down on my chest, as if an invisible fist were slowly closing around it. My legs felt weak. Around me, people began to collapse. One dropped to his knees, clutching at the counter. Another fell backward, knocking over a chair. Someone screamed. Several rushed for the bathroom, stumbling, hitting the walls. The man from the health ministry did not move to help. He stood very still, eyes bright, watching. Behind his glasses, his pupils were tiny black points, focused and sharp. Later, some survivors would say he must have been an amateur, because he left money behind, large sums still sitting on desks and in drawers when he fled. OAI_citation 4 https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa UTM_source=chat.com. I do not think he was an amateur. Amateurs do not watch people die with that kind of calm interest. My vision blurred. My knees buckled. I went down hard, the edge of the counter catching my shoulder. The room spun. From the floor, I saw the man move at last. Not toward us. Toward the vault. He stepped carefully among the fallen bodies, checking pulses with 2 fingers as he went, not to help anyone, but to confirm. His footsteps were very precise. He reached the inner counter, leaned over, and picked up a ledger. With practiced motions, he flipped it open, scanned the pages, and nodded to himself. He took only the cash he could reach easily from the drawers and desktops. Around 160,000 yen, they would later say, not even the full contents of the vault. OAI_citation 5 https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa UTM_source=chat.com. He placed the money calmly into his bag. As he passed me again, heading for the door, my body lay still, but something inside me clawed for air. He paused. Knees in my peripheral vision. Polished shoes. Then he crouched. I felt his gaze on my face. "Still awake?" he whispered. I could not move my lips. My tongue was a stone. His hand brushed my eyelid. Reflex shut it. "Good girl," he said softly. Play dead. For a second, I hoped he might help me. Loosen my collar. Tilt my head so I could breathe. Instead he leaned closer, and I smelled chemicals and bitter almonds on his breath. Tell them, he murmured, that I followed procedure. I showed my card. I gave the warning. They signed nothing, but they swallowed. His fingers tightened briefly on my shoulder, almost a pat, almost a grip. Remember, he said. They trusted the armband more than their own instincts. Then he stood and walked out, closing the door behind him with polite care. I heard his footsteps fade into the street, lost in the distant rattle of a passing tram. 12 of us died. 4 survived, some because the poison dose hit them differently, some because they vomited, some, like me, because death came near and then stepped around us without explanation. OAI_citation 6 https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa UTM_source equals chat.com. We spent weeks in the hospital, our throats raw, our nerves shredded. At night I dreamed of glass pipettes dipping to the bottom of dark bottles. The police came, of course. They interviewed us endlessly. They brought sketches and composites, showed us photographs of suspects. Did he look like this? Or this? Was his nose sharper? Was his hairline higher? Sometimes I said yes just to make the question stop. They found similar incidents at other banks, attempted poisonings, smaller thefts, connected by business cards and a man who claimed to be from the health ministry. In one case, no one died. In another, one person. In ours, 12. OAI_citation 7 https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa UTM_source equals chat.com. Eventually they arrested a painter. They said he had the same amount of money we'd lost. They said he had once received a card from the real health official whose name our visitor had used. They said 2 of us identified him in a lineup. I was not one of those 2. When they showed me his face, I felt nothing. He looked like any other tired man in post-war Tokyo. Memory is unreliable, the investigators said. Trauma distorts perception. Maybe they were right. But there was something about the man in the bank, the coolness of his gaze, the way he watched us fall, that I could not attach to the meek, confused artist they brought before the cameras. OAI_citation 8 https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa UTM_source equals chat.com. Decades later, lawyers and journalists would argue that the painter's conviction was unsafe, that the poison used was not the simple cyanide the court claimed but a more complex military compound, something only specialized units could obtain. OAI_citation 9 https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa UTM_source equals chat.com. By then, I had stopped following the details. Because by then, I had seen the man from the health ministry again. The first time was 10 years after the poisoning. I had left the bank. I couldn't bear the smell of ink and ledgers anymore. Instead I worked in a small office for a trading company, filing export papers. One winter afternoon, just before closing, a man came in wearing a dark suit and an armband. My body reacted before my mind did. Cold sweat. Tight throat. The sense of the room narrowing. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm from the Health Ministry's Occupational Safety Division. We're conducting a quick survey about chemical exposure and influenza vaccinations." He had a different face. Older, maybe. Fuller in the cheeks. But his eyes were the same. I dropped the stack of papers in my hands. They spilled across the floor like spilled medicine. He glanced at me. For a heartbeat, recognition flickered. Then something else slid over his expression, smooth as a lid. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked gently. My colleagues fussed over me, scolding me for skipping lunch, for not wearing a thicker sweater, for working too hard. The man from the health ministry took notes on a clipboard, asked routine questions, thanked us, and left. He did not offer us anything to drink. That time, I told myself it was coincidence. Public health officials did visit offices and schools. Men did wear similar suits, similar armbands. Post-war Japan had many faces that blurred together. But after that, I stayed alert whenever any uniform, any seal, any business card entered a room. And sometimes, in crowds near government buildings or train stations, I would glimpse a familiar posture, the tilt of a head, the angle of shoulders, and feel the ghost of a burning throat. When I blinked, he would be gone. Years passed. The painter convicted of the crime grew old on death row, protesting his innocence until the day he died in prison. Justice ministers came and went without signing his execution warrant, some admitting they doubted his guilt. OAI_citation 10 https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sadamaki_hirasawa utm_source=chat.com. The newspapers called the case Teigin, after our bank. They printed diagrams, timelines, theories. Writers connected the poison to secret wartime laboratories. Novelists and filmmakers turned it into conspiracy and drama. For me, it was never a puzzle to be solved. It was a man's hand brushing my eyelid and a voice saying, "Good girl. Play dead." I thought the story would end with me. I married. Had children. Tried never to mention the bank to them. But silence has a way of echoing. My eldest son became a systems engineer. He worked with computers, those humming, blinking machines that had begun to fill offices. In the 1990s, banks and ministries upgraded their systems. Everything that had once been on paper or in locked evidence rooms started to live behind screens. One evening, he came home late, pale and shaken. "You okay?" I asked. He hesitated. "You know, I've been working on that project to digitalize old case files for the Metropolitan Police," he said. The old fear stirred. "Yes," I said carefully. "Today they gave us a set of records with red seals all over the folders," he went on. "Lots of rules, no copying, no external drives, no printing. We were only supposed to scan and index under supervision." He laughed weakly. "Mom," he said, "it was your case. The bank poisoning. The Teigin incident." My teacup trembled in my hands. "I told them my mother worked in a bank once," he said. "They said, 'Not that bank, we hope,' and laughed. I didn't correct them." He rubbed his temples. "Anyway, the files are old," he said. "Yellow paper, photographs glued to cardboard, handwritten notes in that neat pre-war script. It's just data." But, I prompted. "The system glitched," he said. "Only for that batch. I'd scan a page, and instead of the form, the preview would show something else, a black screen with white text like a command prompt, then just the words Medicine 1 and Medicine 2 over and over." He shook his head. "The tech guy said it was a buffer error," he went on. "But it kept happening, even on different terminals. Every time we hit that date, January 26, 1948, the software slowed down, and the cursor would drift." "Drift?" I whispered. "Yeah," he said. "Like someone was controlling the mouse from somewhere else. It would move to the bottom of the screen, then to the top, like it was tracing a line." My boss joked that the ghost of the poisoner didn't want us digitizing his work. He tried to laugh again. "I know it's stupid," he said. "It's just code and old paper." But, when we were finished for the day, everyone left the room. I stayed behind to shut down the machines. He paused. "When I turned off the overhead lights," he said, "I saw a reflection in the glass of one monitor. Not mine. A man standing behind my chair, wearing a dark suit and an armband." He swallowed. "I spun around," he said. "No one there. But the chair was still rocking. like someone had just been leaning on it. He looked at me. "Mom," he said quietly, "were you really in that bank?" I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to say I had only read about it in the papers, like everyone else. Instead, I told him the truth. For the first time in 50 years, I told my child exactly what had happened in that bright, cold room in Shinamachi. I told him about the bottles, the bitter taste, the collapsing bodies, the man's hand on my eyelid. When I finished, we sat in silence. Finally he said, "Maybe you should have told me sooner." "Why?" I asked. "So I would have known," he said. "When to trust stamps and armbands. And when to trust my own throat tightening. I am an old woman now. The world has changed. The bank where I worked is long gone, closed and rebuilt. The generation that remembers the war is dwindling. People talk about new crimes, new scandals. But some nights, when the news runs a documentary about unsolved cases, they still show the same grainy photo, a man in a hat and coat, his features blurred, walking away from a bank. 12 dead. 4 survived. The robber took a relatively small amount of money and left behind a mystery that has fed police reports, conspiracy theories, and novels for more than 70 years. OAI_citation, 11 time, https://time.com/archive/66268087/ JapanNewsOrmonia/UTM_source=chat.com. Why would anyone do that, people ask. Why poison so many for so little cash? Experts on television speculate about motives. Desperation. Political plots. Military secrets. Revenge. They do not talk about the simplest possibility. That the money was never the point. That some people are more interested in control than profit. That for the man from the health ministry, the real payment was watching 16 people obey him without question, lift cups to their own lips, and swallow. Sometimes, when a flu season is bad, I see posters in train stations. Please cooperate with health checks. Your safety is our priority. Men in vests and masks stand by with thermometers and clipboards. Most are good people trying to protect others. But once in a while, I see someone else. A man in a neat suit, his armband just a little too clean, his smile a little too interested. When our eyes meet, in the reflection of a train window, in the glass door of a clinic, he always looks surprised for a heartbeat. Then he inclines his head, just slightly, as if acknowledging an old colleague. As if to say, "You played dead well. You carried my story forward." And in that moment, I feel the air thicken in my lungs, the phantom burn of invisible crystals sliding down my throat. They say the Teigin incident remains unsolved. That somewhere in the gaps of our history, the true poison man's name is still hidden. OAI_citation, 12 LinkedIn, https://www.linkedin.com/pulse/poison man Japan's crime century James Jim Hoadley's Mohi, UTM_source=chat.com. Maybe they will find it one day in some forgotten file, some DNA match, some confession. Maybe not. Either way, I have come to believe that his real legacy isn't in the court records or the arguments about guilt. It's in the way we look at authority now. The way we glance at an armband, a title, a card, and still, beneath all that, feel a small, ancestral shiver asking, who poured the medicine? Who watched us drink? And if, one winter afternoon, someone walks into your workplace or your home wearing the emblem of safety and says, "There is an outbreak, you must drink this now," I hope, for your sake, that you remember more than I did. Remember the bank in Shinamachi. Remember the 16 cups. Remember the man from the health ministry who left most of the money behind. And listen very carefully, not to his words, not to his stamps and seals, but to the quiet voice in your own throat that says, "This tastes wrong." Because some unsolved cases are not buried in the past. They are rehearsals. And some men do not retire when the file is stamped closed. They just keep making their rounds, looking for people who have never heard their story, and who will still drink when told to.